Hello there.
There's a specific kind of silence that lives inside an unread message. Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of a room you've chosen not to enter yet. You can see the light under the door. You know someone's waiting on the other side. And still, you stay exactly where you are. Maybe it's raining outside right now. Or maybe it's that particular kind of late afternoon where the light goes golden and heavy, and everything slows down just slightly, like the world itself forgot to keep rushing. You're lying there, or sitting there, phone face down on the cushion beside you, and somewhere in the background a notification blinks. Quietly, patiently, without knowing how tired you are. You know what the message probably says. Something that needs a response. Something kind, even. A friend checking in, a plan being made, a conversation waiting to be continued. Nothing urgent. Nothing cruel. Just there. Just asking something of you that, right now, you don't quite have to give. And you don't reply. Not because you're angry. Not because you don't care. Not because you've forgotten they exist. You don't reply because somewhere in your chest, there is this small, quiet need to just be for a moment. Without performing. Without translating your interior life into words someone else can read. Without being, even briefly, someone who is available. There's a word some people use for this. Avoidance. And maybe sometimes it is. But sometimes, and I think you know the feeling I'm talking about, it's something gentler than that. Something that doesn't quite have a name yet. That's what we are here to explore. Think about the last time someone handed you something heavy. Not physically, but emotionally. A question that required honesty. A situation that required you to show up fully. Even something as simple as, how are you doing lately, really? There's a weight to being known. And sometimes, before you can carry it, you need to set it down for a second. That's what the unanswered message is, I think. It's not a wall. It's a pause. Like the breath you take before you speak, except nobody taught us that it's okay to take that breath before we type. We grew up learning that responsiveness meant care. That replying fast meant you valued someone. That leaving a message on read, or worse, not even opening it, was a kind of small betrayal. And so we internalize this idea that our availability is the proof of our love. That to be reachable, at all hours, in all moods, is just what good people do. But here's the thing about always being reachable. It quietly hollows you out. There's a concept in psychology sometimes called ego depletion, the idea that self-regulation, decision-making, emotional labor, all of it draws from the same finite pool. And communication, real communication, costs something. Especially for people who feel everything a little too completely. Especially for those of us who can't just dash off a reply without first feeling the weight of it. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He meant it as a critique. But I think there's an invitation buried in there too, that the room, the quiet, the aloneness, might actually be where we find ourselves again. When you don't reply right away, you are, in some small way, choosing yourself. Not over the other person. Not instead of the relationship. But choosing the version of you that shows up fuller, more present, more honest, more genuinely there, when you finally do respond. And that, I think, is not selfishness. That's just knowing how you work. I remember a specific evening. I couldn't tell you the exact date, but I remember the feeling of it with that strange precision that only certain moments carry. It was one of those nights where everything around me was technically fine. Dinner had been eaten. The lamp in the corner was doing its warm, amber thing. There was a show playing on my laptop that I wasn't really watching, just letting it fill the room so the quiet didn't feel so pointed. And my phone was sitting on the table, screen lit up with a message from someone I genuinely loved. Someone who meant well. Someone who, in any other version of that evening, I would have been happy to hear from. But I just sat there. I read the first few words, enough to know it was kind, enough to know it deserved a real answer, and then I turned the screen face down, slowly, like I was tucking something in for the night. And then I just breathed. I remember staring at the ceiling and noticing the way the lamp threw a soft oval of light up there, slightly uneven, like a moon that hadn't quite decided on its shape yet. I remember the sound of a motorbike passing outside, distant and then gone. I remember the specific texture of the blanket under my palms, the way something so ordinary can suddenly feel like the most grounding thing in the world. Nobody was asking too much of me. That's what made it hard to explain, even to myself. It wasn't that the message was overwhelming. It was that I was already full, already carrying the quiet accumulation of 100 small interactions, 100 tiny performances of okayness, the polite laugh at the right moment, the I'm good, how you said on reflex, the energy spent simply existing in spaces designed for other people's comfort. And in that moment, I had nothing left to translate. Not nothing to feel. I felt everything, actually. A kind of tender exhaustion that sits right in the center of your chest and doesn't hurt exactly, but makes you aware of yourself in a way that's hard to ignore. I just couldn't shape it into words yet. Couldn't hand it across a screen to someone else without first understanding what it was myself. So I didn't. I lay there in the lamplight, in the sound of nothing in particular, and I let myself be unfinished for a little while. And the ceiling, at least, asked nothing of me. Somewhere along the way, I started to separate two things that I had always treated as the same: being present and being reachable. Because they're not the same, are they? You can be reachable every hour of the day and still be completely absent from your own life. Answering every message the moment it arrives, never letting a notification sit, always available, always on, and somehow, underneath all of that responsiveness, slowly disappearing. And on the other side of that, you can be unreachable for an evening, phone face down, world at a gentle distance, and be more fully yourself than you've been all week. I think what shifted for me wasn't a decision exactly. It wasn't a boundary I drew or a rule I set for myself. It was more like a slow realization that arrived quietly, the way most true things do, not announced, just suddenly there. The realization was this: the people who genuinely know me don't need my instant reply to feel loved. And the anxiety that tells me they do, that silence equals neglect, that delay equals distance, that anxiety isn't wisdom. It's just an old habit wearing the costume of consideration. Real connection, the kind that actually sustains you, has always been more patient than that. It can hold a few hours. It can wait for you to arrive as yourself rather than as whoever you manage to perform when you're running on empty. There's something almost tender about it. The idea that the people worth keeping in your life are the ones who would rather wait for the real you than receive an immediate, hollow version. That genuine care doesn't come with a timer attached. And maybe the gentler lesson underneath all of this is simply, you are not a service. You are not a machine with an uptime requirement. You are a person, soft and tired and complex, who sometimes needs to sit in a quiet room and remember what it feels like to exist without an audience. Not forever. Just for a moment. Just long enough to find yourself again before you go back out and offer yourself to the world. So if there's a message sitting on your phone right now, unanswered, glowing softly somewhere in the background of this moment, I want you to know something. It can wait. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you matter too. The version of you that needs a few more minutes of stillness before stepping back into the world, that version is not failing anyone. That version is just human. Quietly, honestly, beautifully human. There is no medal for fastest reply. There is no trophy on the shelf that reads always available, never once chose themselves. And when you reach the end of a long day, nobody lies there wishing they had answered more messages the moment they arrived. What people remember, what you will remember, is how you felt inside the small, unhurried moments. The lamplight, the rain, the ceiling that asked nothing, the rare and tender experience of being completely alone with yourself and finding that the company wasn't so bad. You are allowed to be a slow reply in a fast world. You are allowed to let the silence stretch a little, not as avoidance, not as distance, but as a quiet act of returning to yourself before you give yourself away again. And when you do reply, when you finally pick up the phone and type those words, you'll bring something real to it. Something that was worth the wait. So rest here, just a moment longer. The world will still be there.
Thank you for listening, and see you in the next story.